Hello, guys. Welcome to the first installment of ForgeCast, a weekly podcast dedicated to bringing you all the information you're going to need to dominate in SoulForge. I'm Kit, here with my co-host Fox. We have a couple of guests this week we'd like to kick off the ForgeCast with.
Yep, I'm here with Kit, and we have two people with us. Our first guest is Raidrinn. Raidrinn, would you like to introduce yourself?
I certainly would. Hey guys, I'm Raidrinn. I'm a writer at Forgewatch.com. I do the card preview series and soon we'll be starting another series called the Primer series, which will highlight certain cards and sets that I find especially interesting and talk about synergies and other cool stuff about these cards.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on here with us, Raidrinn. Also with us this week, we have the host of this week's community tournament, Noetherian. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself as well?
Yes, I am Noetherian. I'm also a writer for ForgeWatch.com. I'm also quite active in the forum community. I was one of the people who organized ASCII-based SoulForge events back when we didn't have a client, and now that we do have a client with internet play, I'm one of the people at ForgeWatch who's working on making sure we have a good assortment of organized play opportunities available to us in the coming weeks.
Well, it's great to have you on, Noetherian, and we are really, really happy to get started on that tournament, which is tomorrow, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So we're doing a simulated sealed deck tournament. We're actually doing two different brackets. We're doing one on Saturday and one on Sunday. By staggering them at different times of day, we can make sure that fans in Australia and East Asia, as well as fans in Europe and North America, have an opportunity to participate. It's over 64 people have signed up. It's the largest organized play event in the history of SoulForge. We're sending out randomly generated pools of cards, and people, as we speak right now, are working on using those pools to construct a sealed deck to play in the weekend's tournament. Should be a lot of fun. I think ever since the last patch, people have been playing a ton of games on Steam. There's been a lot of activity in the Steam community group, and I think a lot of people in the community kind of figure that with this small pool of 65 cards that we currently have pre-release, that they've kind of figured out the meta. There's a small number of decks that you see over and over again, particularly decks with like Packmaster, Echo Wisp, Ragefire Hellion. And so I think the sealed event should be a lot of fun just because it shakes things up, forces people to play different cards that they're not used to, forces people to play decks that are a little bit less consistent. So I think it'll be an eye-opening experience for a lot of people.
Yeah, I'm also really excited to hear that Stoneblade has offered us door prizes as well to randomly go out to a few members. Speaking of other things that Stoneblade announced, in this last week's stream, we finally got given a release date. What do you think about that, Fox?
Oh, I think it's great. I'm super, super excited for it. It should be out before Gen Con, so we're looking Monday or Tuesday, barring any delays by Apple, because the iPad version is going out at the same time as the Steam version, so everybody gets to get in on the action.
Yeah, it's going to be an amazing coming week, and they've kept us very excited. They gave us, so far I think, almost just short of a dozen preview cards. The stream, they gave us two, first time ever. The first one they gave us was Zix Storm Herald, a creature that at level 3 gains move, but at each level it's got high toughness and has the ability to attack twice. What do you guys think of him?
So I'm actually really excited about Zix Storm Herald. I'm definitely a Tempest partisan when it comes to faction conflicts. I think they could not have demoed a legendary Tempest creature that I don't like. The interesting thing about Zix's attack twice ability, I mean, obviously Tempest players will use this to get extra damage onto their opponents, but I think it's also an interesting form of evasion. As compared to other level 3 creatures that are capable of doing 20 plus damage, Zix can't be blocked by a single weak level 1 creature. I mean, if you try to put 5/5 in front of him, activate the ability, smash the creature with his first attack, and he gets through and does damage to the opponent with the second attack. So it's exciting to have a Tempest creature that you either have to ignore and take a lot of damage, or you need to block it with something sizable, and he trades well with other big creatures, so I think he's going to work really well in a lot of Tempest decks.
Yeah, I actually just submitted an article about this card. This card has just a ton of synergies. One of them is with the current Rageborn Hellion, which wills at sea changes, but I still expect that it will have the on damage an on damage ability of some kind that will pump parts of your field. So that triggers with that twice. Also, unlike Flame,
Cinderfist Brawler.
Yeah, Cinderfist Brawler. Thank you. Unlike Cinderfist Brawler, which doesn't actually have any health pool, Zix has a rather generous hind end, and therefore using cards like Ferocious Roar or Enrage actually are really, really useful on this card, really help with the longevity of it. This is a fantastic card.
Yeah, there's not much I can say that, Noetherian, Master of All That Is Tempest, and Raidrinn have said already. But I think this card is great, and it's, at the legendary slot, so it's going to be a powerful, powerful chase card that people are going to come after, and I look forward to playing with it.
For me, I have one word to describe this card, and that is Badonkadonk. The card has a great hind end. It can take some hits. I love the fact that it can move. If it works like I think it does, that means you could use it as 2 removal spells. I'm in love with this card. It is very much a chase legendary. The fact that you can choose not to attack with it is twice is incredibly relevant. I'm all around excited about this card. Another card that I'm excited about is, a Utera fanboy, is the Frostwheel Tracker that also got spoiled. This is a card with relatively small stats. It's very weak at each level, but in levels 2 and 3, it can let you play a lower level card of any faction for free. What do you guys think about that one?
So when I see this card, the first thing I think is the Tempest equivalent of Bone Scythe Reaver. Where Bone Scythe Reaver takes a low-level creature off of your opponent's board. This, in spirit with the Utera faction, puts an extra low-level creature onto the board. Obviously, the ability to put a creature of your own into play is a little bit stronger, and you have to pay for that ability by the weaker stats on Tracker. But should be an interesting card. Causes you to think a lot about the level 1 stats on the creatures that you put in your deck, because those level 1 creatures will be coming out in greater quantities later in the game.
Wow, yeah. Tracker, I think Frostwild Tracker is just going to be ubiquitous with Utera. It's going to see play in the aggressive Utera decks, and especially the stall decks. It's going to see a lot of play. It lets you play a lot of low deprecation, a lot of cards that have a high deprecation, such as your Glowstrider Stags and stuff. Also, in like the mid-rangey decks, it combos really well with Spring Dryad. Allowing you to just chain creatures and pump up your Spring Dryads. It clogs the board. It blocks multiple. It will help you block multiple lanes, and it's not required. Unlike Bone Scythe Reaver, the ability is not looking at something that your opponent has. It's just looking at what you have, and you almost always have a level 1 creature in hand. So from level 2 on, the ability is almost always going to be able to be used.
What do you think, Fox?
I think that it's actually a fairly powerful card. We have a cycle of creatures, including Bone Scythe Reaver and a recently spoiled on Facebook card that we'll get to in a minute, that allow you to play creatures for free or have other effects that affect lower level cards. And I think it's just hugely powerful, and it does what it needs to do. And the fact that it's only a heroic rarity means that it's actually going to be fairly easy to acquire, and so we should be seeing it as a staple in a lot of Utera decks.
I agree. What I'm most excited to see this card with is in the stall deck. I mean, I know it has applications elsewhere, but very, very specifically in the stall deck, being able to maintain a board presence while playing low-impact cards like Technosmith or Krogius level 1s, Titan level 1, cards that you don't normally want to play. Well, now you can actually keep up a board presence while playing them. Even if it's just a matter of chumping 2 cards, that's absolutely key. Playing level 1 cards that you need to keep in the game and be relevant, and still maintaining a board that you used to not be able to. So I'm very excited about that, as well as the synergy with other shapers. And speaking of other cards that give you free, Fox just mentioned the other card, Master of Elements. This is a much higher statted creature that does the same thing as the Utera card we were just talking about, but it's Tempe's, and it gives you free spells at lower levels instead of creatures. What do you guys think about that one?
Yeah, it's interesting because this card points towards the existence of a spell-heavy Tempest deck. I think people experimented with spell-heavy Tempest decks in the limited card pool we have right now, and there's some success, but the spell-heavy decks weren't as dominant, I think, as some people hoped, because the supporting cards that you needed for your spells just weren't quite there. So having access to things like Master of the Elements, I think should give those spell-heavy Tempest decks maybe an opportunity to shine. So I generally shy away from spell-heavy decks. I'm more of a creature man myself, but because you don't have to pay very much in stat cost, or you don't have to pay very much in opportunity cost, lower stats, in order to get the free spells. I can imagine this card seeing some play even in as a splash card in a wider variety of decks where you only have a small number of spells, and if it comes through for you, that's great. If it doesn't come through for you, well, you still toss a 5/5 into play, and that's nothing to sneeze at.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the stats on Master of Elements are very good. Like, it's the card is statted just fine. It trades with a lot of things, and it's and just by itself as a body is never going to be bad. The ability itself can be used as a build around me in some decks, but I think more often it will just be used for like leveling up level 1 sparks, or leveling up level 1 surges from the surge cycle. It really helps get that free play, helps you get past that weak level 1. I think it'll do its job. It's not overly powerful, but it's a well-designed card, and I really like it.
Mm-hmm. I completely agree. And once again, you guys have covered most of everything, except for one thing that I find very important: the art. This is some of the best art I have seen on a card yet. I mean, he has a beard of lava at level 3. How awesome is that?
For me, I love the art too. I think that is amazing. I really love the aesthetics that we're starting to see that weren't, previewed as art before. Like the most recent spoilers, Bone Wing is another amazing arted card, and there's even a few ones that we haven't seen that are in the data file soon that I absolutely love the artwork on. I cannot wait to see the cards with those. But for this one in particular, I think that my favorite thing about the card is you don't have to play it in a aggressively slotted spell deck. You can play it as Magma Hound 4 through 6. Because let's face it, if you're playing Tempest, you're most likely currently playing a lot of Magma Hounds. This card essentially fills that role in a much higher statted capacity to make up for the fact that it's not always going to hit. So I very much like it in that regard, in addition to everything else it can do.
Mm-hmm. So we have another card that was shown shortly after this one was, in fact, just the following day, and it's a Uteran card that's legendary. Its name is Leafkin Progenitor, and it has some very interesting abilities. So, Noetherian, why did you get started on that one?
Okay, so my bias is always in favor of playing more aggressive decks, which is why I generally lean towards Tempest, but I mean, this card proves that Utera can deliver the early game powerhouse as well. For those of you who haven't seen it, you play a 3/3 Leafkin on turn 1. On turn 2, you can activate it to transform that into a 7/7 Leafkin 2. Which means you have the opportunity to hit your opponent for 3 damage before it transforms if your opponent doesn't block. If your opponent does block, then you grow your creature to the point where your opponent's going to have trouble killing it. If it stays around for a 3rd turn, you can activate it again, turn it into a level 3 11/11 Leafkin. I think this is an early game powerhouse for aggressive Utera decks. I think it works particularly well with Utera slash Tempest decks. I love the combo with Flamestoke Shaman. You play this next to a Flamestoke Shaman, and it can transform, do the initial transformation immediately instead of having to wait a turn to activate, which means you get that 11/11 on the field 1 turn sooner. Can be the difference between dishing out a lot of damage or getting stalled out. So I'm very excited about Leafkin Progenitor as a player who likes aggression.
Yeah, as an early game aggressive card, this is probably one of the hardest to kill cards that we've seen. It almost always becomes a 7/7 before your opponent can do any damage to it. It's going to have to eat a removal spell while it's level 1, or it's going to start getting out of hand. And then the fact that the 11/11, the level 3, starts pooping out baby progenitors that are also just going to be little 7/7s. I mean, the problem with this card is that if you're behind on board, it's going to do almost nothing for you, and by the time you get to player level 3, it's pretty much completely useless. But by itself in the early game, like, I will turn 1 play this card every opportunity I get.
For me, I agree. Early decks, very, very, very strong. Late game decks, I think that, the level 3 version's exciting. The level 3 version's exciting when you can activate it in player level 1 and 2. I feel once you hit that higher level, the card tapers off, which means I don't know that I expect this card to fill the role that other people might think. I don't expect to use its 3rd ability as combo, not unless we get another card that, doubles the tokens. But it has some interesting synergy with a structure. I know we're not getting structures in set 1, but was it Fangwood Field that boosts the stats? Like,
yes.
The level 3 version I could actually see working amazingly well with that, pooping out actually large creatures into adjacent lanes. I think that is a really great idea, and it wouldn't punish you for playing a structure because you suddenly have a creature in that lane. So you're not actually losing board presence when you play it. I think that part is great. Again, very excited about the aggression in this card, and that's the role I would see it playing in other decks. I see this as, how stall decks last, through player level 1 and maintain a life total that's above 90. I see that being its primary role there, and I see it as a staple in aggressive decks. I love Big Mama Leaf.
Yeah, I like the fact as well, it gets very difficult to deal with, because if you do activate, it goes onto the defensive, and your opponent has to spend cards in order to deal with it. So every extra card they spend in order to deal with it means a card you didn't have to worry about them playing, or another creature you didn't have to worry about them playing, onto the field. And that gives you time to do other things that are also powerful, like play Brightsteel Gargoyles, or put down Echo Wisps, or play a Synapsis Oracle. It's just a great card all around.
Wow, I totally lost my train of thought. Sorry about that, guys. Well, I'll just move on then. Card Spoiled Today is another one that I'm really excited about. This is the first card that absolutely rewards you for playing monofaction. It's called Steelforge Avatar. It comes into play at every level. It gets equivalent to its level armor, and it gets +1/+1, +2/+2, or +3/+3, depending on which level it is, additional power and toughness based on how many Aloyan cards are in your hand when you play it. What do you guys think of this card?
So I think this is a really elegant way to encourage people to play a monofaction deck. Creates really interesting trade-offs in deck building. If I'm building a mostly Aloyan deck, do I splash in some utility cards from another faction, or do I instead take the Steelforged Avatar, which is a strong, useful card, and toss that in to fill the final gaps in my deck? So I think a lot of people have discussed on the forums, this card is very, very strong at level 1. If you're playing Mono Aloyan, this is going to be a 7/7 Armor 1 creature at level 1. There's hardly anything that we've seen that can kill it. I mean, you're looking at like Doomwing as being the virtually the only other level 1 card I think that we've seen which can take care of this. I guess a Grave Pact if your opponent has something to sacrifice, but anyway, this is a really difficult card for your opponent to trade with. It's a powerful level 1. Obviously, that could be used for early game aggression, but the other thing I want to point out is that if you're playing Mono Aloyan, even if you don't play this during player level 1, tossing out a 7/7 Armor 1 creature on turn 7 is still a very strong play. And so you're going to have to play level 1 cards during player level 2. And this is the kind of level 1 card you want to have in your deck when you get that all level 1 draw on turn 7. You play your Steelforged Avatar, you get a 7/7 level 1 Armor 1 creature, and you survive until you can draw better cards. So I think this type of low depreciation card is a good way to reward people for playing monofaction.
Wow, and Noetherian kind of just took all my thunder, because I've been feeling pretty. I've been kind of feeling pretty meh on this card, and he's starting to change my mind, especially with the Deep Branch Prowler parallelity or parallel the 7/7 that during the late parts of the game, it's okay to throw that on the field, and it will do work for you. That being said, I see this card, and I worry that it is tricking me into limiting my options. I am going to play a card that, while very aggressive, does not sit in a faction that tends to be extremely aggressive, even in a robot tribal deck. It's still kind of mid-rangey. It's hoping for the mid game, and then during level 3, while fine, its stats aren't anything spectacular, and its ability is also not terribly spectacular. And so I worry that while very, very good in level 1 and also still pretty good in level 2, that it's going to trick me into not having me play a second faction that's going to give me better removal or better utility creatures. I don't know. I'm kind of waffling on this one.
Well, that's actually interesting because, first off, I think I am going to try this card out because, well, obviously it's great with Power Surge, especially at level 3, because one single Power Surge changes him from being a 15/15 to a 21/21 Armor 3. You get another one of those and he's a 27/27. But who needs removal when you have Bright Steel Gargoyle? I mean, come on, really. This card is awesome.
I have to say I agree with pretty much everything said here. I'm just going to focus very briefly on the finer points. At 7/7 at level 1 with Armor 1, he trades across the board with everything, including Corpse Crawler, which is, supposed to be a 2-for-1 card. This card is always going to be a 2-for-1, or they have to have a card that can react to it like Doomwing. Even Grave Pact is a 2-for-1. At level 2, it trades with every card out there. It kills a dragon without dying. As far as I'm aware, it's the only card that can kill both Dragon and Corpse Crawler without actually it can't kill corpse crawler without dying, but it trades with it. But it kills dragon without dying. There's no other creature that can do it except for those two. At level 3, it's weaker, but you make up for that by having a card that at level 1 is better than Prowler, can still be played aggressively at level 1 or 2 in player level 2, and vice versa at level 3. You can still play it at level 2 and have it be a proactive card. A potentially 11/11 card that has armor 2 is hard for your opponent to deal with, even with some of the level 3 cards, about half of them. Going beyond that, again, I don't need to touch on Power Surge. Fox just brought that up, but I will say that it's okay for this card to be a 6/6 armor 1. You can play cards like Enrage in your deck or your Ronti Bolt. You can splash those other cards because a 6/6 armor 1 is still better than 95% of the creatures at level 1. A 10/10 armor 2 is still better than almost all the other level 2 cards. There's only a handful of cards that are better than that. You can still play other factions. You're not restricted to mono and Loyan. You get rewarded when your hand is such. If I play this card, I'm still going to splash up to 6 cards from another faction in my deck. I mean, you compare this card to Forge Play Sentry because it's a slightly worse version at level 3, but at all the other levels it's strictly better. Well, I mean, you could technically have 2 other faction cards in your hand at level 1 and still have it be better than a Forge Plate Sentry. I don't think this card needs to be mono and Loyan at all to get a benefit. I think the card is absolutely amazing, and the most important part is it fills the weakest role of a Loyan, which is the early game, and that's why I'm most excited about it. I'm really happy they're showing us all these cards that we can brew around. Really showcases the game's promise and potential.
Yeah, I'm very, very excited for the first set to come out, as they're calling it Alpha right now. And I just love the fact that this card is also at the heroic rarity. Moving on, we also have a series of tweaks and rebalances that we've been seeing and hearing about. We've heard that Zymus is getting rebalanced to start as a 5/2 vanilla creature. Hellions getting a complete rework. Packmaster, Firestorm, and Uranti Bolt are all getting tweaks. So what do you guys think about those?
So I was actually really happy to see Zemus as a 5/2 vanilla. As some people might remember, there was a version of Zemus that was previewed last year, which was too powerful, and so they needed to weaken Zemus somehow. And the fact that Zemus is fragile with no special abilities at level 1 means that they've apparently chosen to weaken him early game and leave him as a late game powerhouse. I would expect to see something like a Zemus that is 5/2 vanilla at level 1. At level 2, again, low health, but comes back from the dead, perhaps once. And then at level 3, again, a relatively high power, low health creature that comes back from the dead multiple times, where coming back from the dead repeatedly seems to be Zemus' shtick, and keeping that as like an iconic, powerful level 3 Necroom ability seems exciting, and then balancing it off with a very fragile early game.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see Zemus. I can't wait to see the rest of his stats in the upcoming week. Hellion getting a rework is entirely necessary, and I'm glad that it's being done. I don't know what that rework is, but I still hope that it keeps the spirit of deal damage to your opponent. My stuff gets stronger. Packmaster definitely does need a nerf. Firestorm, I think that any change that's going to happen, it's just going to get more powerful. I don't know how powerful it's going to get. And I'm surprised to see Uranti Bolt getting tweaked. I actually thought that it was... I thought that it performed a pretty key service for the Tempe's faction in the aggressive decks by holding off a bomb at bay so you could try and get those last few points of damage before you were completely overrun. But... I'm not the designer, and I haven't seen the entire set.
Well, as far as Uranti Bolt goes, I can see why they're changing it. They said they're making it much weaker at level 1, which to me probably means that they're going to be taking off the Defender Clause and maybe lowering the stats so it's on par or slightly weaker than Spark Bolt. Lightning Spark. I personally, seeing how they want to push opportunity costs in the game, I can see where they're coming from and wanting to change that. Right now, it's the card that you don't want to play during level 1 under any circumstance except to kill maybe a Packmaster. At level 2 and 3, you're stopping their Grimgaunt from eating your face. You're stopping their Corgius from removing you from the game. And at level 1, you're getting the effect to eliminate a super high opportunity cost like Krogius from hitting you for a full sequence of turns. That's 80 damage, theoretically, this card's preventing. So I can see why they're adding that opportunity cost. As far as the other cards, Noetherian pretty much covered Zymus to the point that I couldn't add anything. And the other cards, Hellion and Packmaster, those changes are very, very, very evident in the fact that they needed to happen. So I don't feel like I need to touch those either.
I'm sorry. I love that. I love the Krogius target player is removed from game.
I hear they're going to add that to the flavor text.
Yes.
Oh gosh.
Okay, go ahead, Fox.
I do like the fact that Zymus is going to be in the first set from what we've seen, simply because he is the epitome of a Necrium card. The fact that if he's anything like he used to be, the fact that he comes back even once or multiple times is, just very much Necrium. Rageborn Hellion has been, very much does what Tempest does, and Packmaster does what Utera does. They are very much cards that explain and show what the factions are trying to do. And I like that, those cards are powerful, and they will be seeing play. We don't know the value of Hellion, but there are still efficient answers like Botanimate in the set. And I just think that's great.
I completely agree. Botanimate's another card that's really exciting, and I think that's one of the reasons why they were okay to keep Zymus in. And I'm glad they showed us Botanimate before they showed us Zymus. It really kept things in perspective for us. That said, they also announced a bunch of other things during the stream, like the names of the rarities. We have those all now. Common being your typical common, rare lining up with what's usually the uncommon slot. Heroic is taking over the usual rare slot, and lastly, we've got legendary rounding out as a super rare or mythic.
Mm-hmm. We've heard a number of cards and seen what their rarities are. We know that Grove Hunters and Deathseeker are both commons. They have the green 3-pointed triangle. We don't know which cards are at the rare slot, but it's a 4-pointed blue star. We know that Epidemic is at Heroic. We've showed a number of other preview cards that are Heroic, and it's a 5-pointed gold star. And then Grimgaunt Devourer and Bright Steel Gargoyle, two very powerful cards, are legendaries, 6-pointed red star.
I do want to point out that the 4-pointed blue star, as Fox called it, is actually a diamond, and I feel that that's important to note.
Looks like a star to me, bro.
Well, the last bit of information that they've given us is a very loose timeline of their priorities of what's going to happen post this first core set patch. Should contain the next patch should contain drafting and tournaments. Their biggest priority after that is to tackle trading. Chat and campaign are loosely going to be after that. We don't know what order they'll come in. We know that chat is not a high priority. And then lastly, we're not looking to see co-op and raids until the middle of next year.
Mm-hmm. So these are great things for us to hear about. So to go ahead and bring this all to a close, we've got a short limited section called My Pack Your Pick that Kit is in charge of.
All right, so I've gone ahead and pulled out a standard 8-card pack. We don't know that this is what draft is going to look like. In fact, they've explicitly stated that draft packs are going to be different, but, work with what you have. So I've gone ahead and gotten 1 rare, 2 uncommons, and 5 commons. You guys go ahead and look at this for a few minutes, and then, Noetherian, after just a few seconds, why don't you go ahead and tell us what your first pick would be, and then if that card was gone, what your second pick would be.
Is this where we cue Jeopardy music or something?
do 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 do. Okay, I'm done.
Okay.
All right, Noetherian, go ahead.
So when I look at this pack, there's an easy first pick for me. I'm grabbing the Deep Branch Prowler. So Deep Branch Prowler is an amazingly flexible creature, one of the largest creatures at level 1. works really well in any aggressive deck when you need to put pressure on your opponent early. Also because the 7/7 breakthrough card holds its value so well into the late game. It's a low depreciation card. I'm happy to draw this as part of an all level 1 hand later in the game. Having cards that help me survive my all level 1 hands, I think, is very valuable. And so I'm happy to have it in the deck. It doesn't push me towards any particular archetype. It's useful with any second faction that I have to pick up. So I'm happy to grab Deep Branch Prowler and see what factions seem to be underdrafted and look for good opportunities to grab Utera plus something. That being said, if Deep Branch Prowler is gone and I see this pack, then I'm looking at removal. I think that Toxic Spores and Vengeful Spirit are both very playable in Limited. Vengeful Spirit's not as strong after the last patch. Its special ability is only -2/-2 at level 1. But again, as you level up your Vengeful Spirit, it still becomes powerful enough to take out most of the scary threats in the game. And so Toxic Spores, again, takes out most of the scary threats. You take damage in the process, but it's still... removal is removal. I think whether I go with Vengeful Spirit or Toxic Spores depends on what color I'd rather be in. Personally, I'm very happy to be in Utera for Limited, so I probably grab Toxic Spores, although Vengeful Spirit might be the slightly better removal card.
Okay, so in drafting, I've always followed the 4-step rule. You have bombs, you have removal, you have creatures, and you have just utility spells. Excuse me. Now, I look at this pack, and the only card here that I am genuinely excited about is Ferocious Roar. I genuinely think that this card is a bomb. Now, and the reason for that is, in Limited, you're going to be using a lot of commons, and a lot of common creatures just are not very exciting. Ferocious Roar helps take those not exciting creatures and puts them over the top of your opponent's creatures, and the level 3, the breakthrough, will end the game in your favor. Also, I look at this pack, and I see the one Rift Lasher, which, Rift Lasher's fine, and I see the one Vengeful Spirit, and that's fine. It's like, okay, I could cut Necrium, or I could cut Tempest, but I think that those two factions are going to be very overdrafted, because people are going to open up and they're going to see an Aranti Bolt, or they're going to see a Lightning Spark, and they're going to be like, oh, I get to first pick this removal, and then what's the next Tempest card that I can take? Or they're going to see the Vengeful Spirit and go, oh, that's kind of like removal, and then there's a Grave Pact, and then maybe there's a Call to Weak, and it's going to be very overdrafted. So I think Ferocious Roar is the first pick, and then my second pick is actually the Deep Branch Prowler, like Noetherian's first pick, for all the reasons that he stated. It's just very flexible, and it's okay to play at any level.
Mm-hmm. For me, after all those excellent points have been said and you were talking about removal, I actually do take the Rift Lasher first, because it does send a strong signal, and that there are going to be multiple people fighting over Utera in this pack, because basically every single card that is in Utera is playable. It's a bomby uncommon as well, and it's removal. Removal is always at a premium in Limited. However, if Rift Lasher wasn't here, I'd take the Ferocious Roar for exactly the same reasons. Pump spells are good. Breakthrough at level 3 is awesome. But again, 3 other Uterian cards in this pack makes me really hesitant to take the Ferocious Roar.
For me, I just gotta bring it back. Badonkadonk. I like Tempest cards that have big butts, and I cannot lie. I love that it is pseudo removal. I love that it's the only Tempest card in this pack, and love that it's a strong uncommon. Like, there's very little ways to get removal that comes persistently on creatures in the card set we've seen at anything less than rare. It is there on rare. The only other card that does something similar is also in Tempest, and that's Magnahound. Those are the only creatures that are uncommon unless they actually do damage, and Rift Lasher is the only one that does it persistently. I take that simply because it's the only Tempest card, and I am excited about it. After that, originally when I looked at this pack, I would have taken Scout Drone simply because taking the rare out of the pack sends at least a message to other people that there was a rare worth drafting in your pack. The fact that it's one of the only 2 Aloyan cards and Sparkbot is not by itself exciting really sends a message that Aloyan's not open, especially if you're getting this pack 3rd or 4th pick. Going beyond that, I don't want to take Utera simply because there's so much Utera in the pack, and I want everybody else fighting over it. I also feel like currently it's one of the stronger limited cards just because it has so much nakedly powerful creatures. I take the Vengeful Spirit as my 2nd card. It's removal. It usually trades with cards that are better than it. Nobody wants to block it if you put it on the board, allowing you to get a couple turns where you're hitting in. And it's another card that can trade with Dragon at level 2, which excites me a lot.
Yep. So that's going to be the end of my Pack Your Pick, and will be also the end of the first episode of ForgeCast. Thank you, Raidrinn, thank you, Noetherian, and thank you, Kit. Thank you all for being here. It's been great to talk to you all. We will be at Gen Con next week. Myself, I know that Raidrinn's going to be there, and Sailman is also going to be there, and he's going to be our guest star next week. And if Raidrinn is nice, he'll be on as well.
Cool. Yeah, I'll
All right,
be there,
guys. Thank you so much for being here. Have a great week and enjoy the set next week, guys.
All right, see y'all later.
Bye.
Bye.
Oh my god, Becky, look at her butt.